I throw the word definitive around a lot on this channel, and I do it even more when I'm talking about Batman the Animated Series. But I don't know that I've ever before today used it in such a definitive way. Because today, we're going to talk about the quintessential Quinn. I'm here to pay tribute not only to the greatest Harley Quinn there ever was, and the greatest Harley Quinn there ever will be, but when talking about Arleen Sorkin, you're also talking about the core of the character that you know. Because she herself is pretty much the purpose for this character actually existing. While most of the most beloved Batman characters come straight from the comics, Harley's story actually didn't start on comic book panels, but instead on the small screen. Her creation started in Batman the Animated Series, when it was decided that the Joker could use a henchman/punchline. The story behind the story starts when one half of the Batman the Animated Series show creators, Paul Dini, happened to catch an old episode of Days of Our Lives. And in that episode, his old college friend Arleen Sorkin just so happened to be playing a comedic court jester in a dream sequence.
I'm on at the roll, let's get it! Is it true what they say about men with large crossbows? Forceth me to shoot at you the moon. Walk this way. No, walk this way.
And it was then and there that Paul Dini knew that he found the Joker's partner in crime. After being cast in the role, a lot of the character's characterizations and mannerisms were modeled after Sorkin herself. Meaning that she wasn't just playing the first Harley Quinn, she was pretty much the premise for Harley Quinn. She wasn't tailor-made to play this part was tailor-made to be played by her. Most of the modern Harley mannerisms that the character is famous for today come from Arleen's real-life personality and bubbly energy. Even her accent, her inflection, her enunciation, that classic court jester voice was really just Arleen Sorkin's natural speaking voice.
Thank you very much, Fran, and thank all of you. Okay, I'm really glad I called.
She brought such an infectious energy to the role that despite it being created for one appearance, one time, in one episode, it managed to wow those behind the scenes and convince them before the episode ever officially aired that this character needed to make a comeback. So she had fans before she ever even had fans. Which is interesting because in her first episode, she's not quite as over the top as she'd one day become. Comparatively, she's actually quite tame. But even Arleen Sorkin at a 2 was your standard voice actor's 8.
Face it, Harl, this stinks. You're a certified nutso wanted in 12 states and hopelessly in love with a psychopathic clown.
Ha! And here you thought I was just another bubble-headed blonde bimbo. Well, the joke's on you. I'm not even a real blonde. I tried to play by the rules, but no, they wouldn't let me go straight. Society is to blame.
What a shame. A pure, innocent little thing like her led astray by bad companions.
Right. Tell me another.
Are you out of your mind?
Yeah, at what point did my life go Looney Tunes?
Despite being created as an accessory to the Joker, she wasn't just some gender-swapped recreation of the Clown Prince of Crime. There were undoubtedly some similarities between the two criminal comedians who spent all their time in each other's company. A clear contrast between the jester's actions and reactions, juxtaposing horrific crimes with harmless humor, treating even the most severe of situations as comedic opportunities for their latest stand-up special. But unlike the Joker, there's not necessarily a sinister edge to her sarcasm. Instead of the jester's jaded cynicism, this clown has a childlike naivety. While the Joker could always come off as dark and demented, Harley always approached the awful with absolute glee. Her bubbly, upbeat personality became just as synonymous with her name as her psychosis. It's almost as if she's aware of what it is she's doing, but unaware of how serious what she is doing. She treats almost everything as if it were, well, a cartoon. And granted it was, but to the rest of the world that surrounded her, it was real life. It's almost as if she believes that violence and mayhem don't matter so long as a few laughs are had. And while she may ignore it, possibly because she's deafened to the cries of others so long as Joker is there to provide thunderous applause, There have always been consequences and casualties to her chaos. The distinction between Harley Quinn and the Harley Quinn of hate didn't just end at their brand of humor. Whereas the Joker always seemed like a lost cause, Harley came off as much more human and redeemable. She was good at heart, even if she was persuaded to be bad on a daily basis. At the end of the day, sadly, she was just a love-struck lunatic. A therapist who fell in love with her patient. A bad joke. And for all the patients that she once diagnosed, she was never able to properly treat her own obsessive attachments, becoming an accessory to her abuser. While the two were partners and partners in crime, the Joker always treated her much more as a movable pawn in his plans, only managing to win her love through false narratives and total manipulation. It was always easy to meet Harley with sympathy and empathy, because despite being an accomplice to an antagonist, despite she herself becoming a victimizer, she never stopped being a victim. Joker was the sole motivator in her life, so much so that she didn't commit crimes because she liked doing it. She did it to appease the psycho that she deemed perfect, the man who met her love with disgust and her affections with disdain. The dysfunction of Harley and Joker's relationship may have been played for laughs, mostly as a commentary of the absolute absurd, but the show still made it clear that the actual nature of that unnatural relationship was no laughing matter. It's a true depiction of the horrors of abusive relationships, and how the human mind could be warped when misguided by the human heart, constantly going back to the same person who ruined her life out of some sick sense of loyalty and love. Two things the Joker himself would know nothing about. While Harley treats her life as a comedy, in actuality, it's very much a tragedy. It's just a fall from grace with some unexpected humor.
The Joker doesn't love anything except himself. He had you pegged for hired help the minute you walked into Arkham.
You're wrong! My boy does love me! Does!
He's mine!
You wouldn't dare. You don't have the guts. Not in a million years would you.
I'm having a bad day! I didn't even get to keep my new dress! And I actually paid for it!
What are the painful truths of comedy? You always take shots from folks who just don't get the joke!
Ah! My fault. I didn't get the joke.
One of the greatest heartbreaks the animated series provided us with is the start-stop development Harley saw. In one episode, it would seem like she was starting to come to her senses, realizing that the Joker is more of a monster than he is a man, that his heart is so small it can only contain love for one, that being himself. Or Batman, depending on how you look at it. But then in the very next episode, she's back by his side. Now this could seem like a continuity error or a lack of concrete canon, but in actuality I think it's pretty symbolic of how toxic relationships become a vicious cycle. Even in the moments where she pulls herself away, she's still inevitably drawn back in. For all the wrongs that the Joker has done, he could never do wrong in her eyes, even when he's wronging her right to her face. It's a really sad story that we see play out time and time again. Yet this character's arc doesn't begin and end with her infamous boyfriend. Despite starting off as a two-dimensional joke, the role quickly evolved into a three-dimensional character, with the series even allowing her to break away from the Joker in intervals, and even headline some stories of her own. The goodwill that she built up with fans often overshadowed the terrible things that she was doing, because whether she was good, whether she was bad, she was always entertaining. She put the fun in dysfunctional. You always wanted to root for her, even in the moments you knew you really shouldn't have been. She built up a really fun friendship with Poison Ivy. The two treat each other as equals and accomplices. It was a friendship that was made in rogue heaven and good guy hell. I think it would be fair to even say that these two made for a dynamic duo, acting as each other's support systems and each other's greatest enablers. Their union was very symbiotic, because it was good to see Harley confide in somebody who wasn't the Joker, and it was good to see Poison Ivy confide in something that wasn't a houseplant. They had a genuine friendship and a real connection in spite of seemingly having nothing in common whatsoever. The villainesses had a very classic straight man, funny man dynamic, and I think it worked wonders. Harley, of course, was there to create animated anarchy, while Ivy was there to realistically react to her insanity. Each woman acted as the other's support system. And it didn't stop at Poison Ivy either, because this Harley managed to have chemistry with just about everybody she ever shared a screen with, creating distinct dynamics with each hero and villain of Gotham City. What I really appreciate about this character is that her story doesn't necessitate villainy. She's been both ally and enemy to and of the Dark Knight, both helping him on missions and being the target of said missions. She never really harbored the hatred for the hero that her pseudo-husband did. As a matter of fact, on some levels, she was shown to somewhat admire the Caped Crusader, only disliking him due to him being the object of Joker's obsession rather than herself. In a strange and twisted way, Harley felt like she was in competition with Batman for the Joker's affections. And in an even stranger twist, it was in a constantly losing effort. So feeling as if the only way to move on to a healthy relationship with one of the most deeply mentally unhealthy inmates at Arkham Asylum would be by putting an end to Batman, to purge his fixation. And look, I know that I'm mentioning plot points and not really the quality of the performance here, but I'm actually doing this to articulate all that was asked of this actress. She was made to be the Joker's henchman and love interest, Poison Ivy's gal pal and best bud, Batman's greatest annoyance and an adversary. She was asked to be diabolical but sympathetic, be a bad guy but have a good heart, be both loving and hateful at a moment's notice, accomplice, criminal, sidekick, comic foil, victim, villain, friend, protege, all wrapped into one, and she excelled at every single aspect. In a short time, Harley would become one of the animated series' most famous figures, and then she'd eventually become one of the most famous villainesses in Batman's rogues gallery, actually managing to rival her partner in popularity. Without Arleen Sorkin's talent and energy attached to the role, I doubt that it would see the longevity and boost into icon status that it's seen since. Actually, without Arleen Sorkin, the role would more than likely never even exist to begin with. Arleen would continue to voice the character in follow-ups of the animated series. This included the new Batman Adventures, Superman the Animated Series, Static Shock, Justice League. The character was also carried over to her own web series, Gotham Girls. She would also continue to voice the character in related movies and games like Batman Vengeance, The Adventures of Batman and Robin, and Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Arleen also voiced the character in installments outside of this animated universe, playing a much more mature version of this character in the first game in the Arkham franchise, Arkham Asylum, and also portraying the part in DC Universe Online. The depiction doesn't really vary because it never needed to. She couldn't improve the part because the part was already made in her image. Arleen couldn't be any more like herself than she already was. She continued to thread the needle every time that she stepped in the role, even when it was becoming clear that time was taking a toll on her ability to play the part the same way she once had. Yet despite that, in her later years, she still met the performance with the same passion that she always had. As the part originated with her, and in part was created because of her, it was perfected from the start. And if you don't believe me that the part was perfected prematurely, then go ahead and take a look at the timeline of Harleys. Every Harley Quinn actress that has come since her has done their best to try to replicate her. At the end of the day, Arleen Sorkin deserves all of the praise. Not just for playing a part, but for playing an integral role in the Batman mythos. Without her, there would be no Harley Quinn. Without question, Arleen was the best Harley.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.